Most stories about omegas speak of their intoxicating scent, that honeyed perfume that drives alphas wild with desire. But Lyra Ashwood's story began with the absence of scent, a void where nature's most primal call should have lived. She stood in the healer's workshop at dawn, grinding bitter thorn root into powder with practiced precision. The paste, when applied beneath her collarbones each morning, masked every trace of what she truly was. Over a decade of this ritual, over a decade of calculated deception that had kept her alive in a world where unclaimed omegas rarely survived past their first heat. The irony wasn't lost on her. She who possessed the rarest omega bloodline in existence, pretending to be a beta healer in the Crimson Ridge Pack. She who should have been treasured, protected, fought over, instead chose invisibility. Because Lyra knew something the world had forgotten. Sometimes the greatest power lies not in being claimed, but in remaining free. Outside, the pack stirred to life. Warriors headed to training grounds, their growls and challenges echoing across the compound. Merchants opened their stalls in the lower village. And somewhere in the stone fortress that crowned the mountain, Alpha King Theron Blackmoon was beginning his day, unaware that everything he believed about his pack was built on a lie she had carefully maintained. The workshop door chimed. Lyra didn't look up from her mortar and pestle, recognizing the hesitant footsteps of Sarah, the baker's daughter. "The usual?" Lyra asked, her voice deliberately flat, emptied of the musical quality that might betray her nature. "Please," Sarah whispered. Another omega seeking suppressants. They came to her because she never asked questions, never judged. How could she, when her own deception ran deeper than any of theirs? As Lyra prepared Sarah's order, her fingers worked from muscle memory while her mind wandered to that night long ago, the night that changed everything. She had been 14, trembling in a cave while outside her family's blood painted the snow crimson. The Wrenclaw pack had come for her mother, one of the last pure-blooded omegas. They hadn't expected resistance. They hadn't expected her father and brothers to fight so fiercely. They also hadn't expected a 14-year-old girl to kill their alpha with a shard of silver glass when he cornered her in that cave. Murder. That's what they would call it if anyone ever discovered the truth. Never mind that he had already slaughtered her family. Never mind that she had been defending herself from a fate worse than death. The law was clear. An omega who killed an alpha, regardless of reason, faced immediate execution. So she had burned her family's bodies to hide their identities, used her mother's final gift, the recipe for perfect scent suppression, and disappeared into the crowd of refugees fleeing the territory wars. Just another orphaned beta seeking sanctuary. "Thank you," Sarah murmured, tucking the vial into her cloak. Lyra merely nodded, but as Sarah turned to leave, she caught the girl's wrist gently. "Double the dose next week," she said quietly. "The king returns from his campaign tomorrow. The fortress will be flooded with alphas from allied packs." Sarah's face paled. More alphas meant more danger for hidden omegas. "How do you always know these things?" "Because I make it my business to know," Lyra thought. "Because information is the only weapon I have." "Healers hear everything," she said instead. After Sarah left, Lyra returned to her preparations, but her hands trembled slightly. The king's return. She had managed to avoid his direct attention for 3 years, ever since arriving at Crimson Ridge after several years of wandering and hiding. She'd spent 2 years as an apprentice healer before being promoted to full status, carefully maintaining her beta facade. But gatherings like these tested every omega's control. The air would be thick with pheromones, dominance games, and the constant threat of exposure. A memory surfaced unbidden, her mother's voice, soft and urgent in those final moments. Your bloodline is not a gift, my daughter. It is a target. The Ashwood Omegas carry something ancient in their veins, something that makes alphas lose all reason. Promise me you'll hide. Promise me you'll survive. She had promised. And she had kept that promise through years of careful lies, measured distances, and practiced indifference. She had become invisible, unremarkable, safe. The morning sun climbed higher, and Lyra made her way to the pack hospital where she spent her official hours. The building sat halfway between the lower village and the fortress, serving both common wolves and ranked members. As she entered, she noticed unusual activity, healers rushing about, supplies being organized with military precision. Ashwood! Head healer Marcus barked. Storage inventory! The King's Guard sent word. We're to prepare for possible injuries. Border skirmishes have been bloodier than expected. Lyra bowed her head in acknowledgement and headed to the storage rooms. She preferred tasks like these, away from crowds where someone might notice the careful way she controlled her breathing or question why she never attended pack runs during full moons. The storage room was musty and dim, filled with shelves of dried herbs, tinctures, and medical supplies. Lyra began cataloging, her mind already calculating what they would need for battle wounds. Silver leaf for infection, blood moss for clotting, wolfsbane in precise doses for pain. Her mother had taught her the healing arts during those years in hiding, before that final terrible night. But as she reached for a high shelf, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside, heavy, authoritative, and far too early. The king wasn't supposed to return until tomorrow. The door burst open with such force that several bottles rattled on their shelves. Lyra spun around, her heart slamming against her ribs as she found herself face to face with Alpha King Theron Blackmoon himself, his eyes wild with something between rage and panic, a deep wound visible through his torn armor. Blood soaked through the king's leather armor, darkening his left side. Behind him, 2 guards supported a third between them, the injured wolf's head lolling unconsciously. But it was the king's eyes that made Lyra's breath catch. Not the expected alpha gold of authority, but burning silver, ancient and feral. Healer, he growled, his voice cutting through her shock. Poison, northern blade, fix him. He jerked his head toward the unconscious guard. Training overrode fear. Lyra rushed forward, her hands already reaching for the injured wolf. Get him on the table, she ordered, her healer's authority momentarily overshadowing everything else. You! She pointed to one guard. Boil water. You! To the other. Find healer Marcus. Tell him code black. He'll know what to bring. The guards scattered. She was alone with the king and his dying man. Lyra's fingers found the wound. A shallow cut, barely bleeding, but the skin around it was already showing web-like black veins. Shadowbane. She'd seen it once before, in her mother's healing texts. Lethal in hours, curable only if caught immediately. Hold him down, she commanded, forgetting to whom she spoke. This will hurt. The king's massive hands pinned his guard's shoulders without hesitation. Lyra grabbed a silver blade from her kit, sterilized it with alcohol, and began cutting away the poisoned flesh. The guard screamed, thrashing despite his unconscious state. The poison attacks the nervous system first, she explained, working with swift precision. Pain response remains even when consciousness fades. She didn't know why she was explaining, only that the silence felt dangerous. Will he live? The king's question held an edge that suggested the answer better be yes. If I'm fast enough. She reached for a vial of concentrated wolfsbane, dangerous to use, potentially deadly if measured wrong, but the only thing strong enough to counter Shadowbane. Her hands were perfectly steady as she measured the dose. 3 drops, 4, 5. That could kill him, the king observed. So could doing nothing. She met his eyes briefly, then wished she hadn't. This close, she could see flecks of gold returning to the silver, could smell the iron and ash that clung to him beneath the blood. Alpha pheromones rolled off him in waves, making her thankful for the masking paste that hid her reaction. She forced the antidote down the guard's throat, then packed the wound with healing herbs. The black veins began to recede almost immediately. "He'll need monitoring for the next 6 hours," she said, washing blood from her hands. "If he survives those, he'll recover fully." Only then did she notice the king hadn't moved. He stood perfectly still, watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. The silver in his eyes hadn't completely faded. "You're bleeding," she said, gesturing to his side. "It's nothing." "Shadowbane is never nothing." She moved without thinking, reaching for his armor. "Even a scratch can—" His hand caught her wrist. Not painfully, but firm enough to stop her cold. "You give orders easily for a beta." The words hung between them like a blade. Lyra forced herself to remain calm even as her mind raced. Had she been too authoritative? Too confident? Betas could be healers, yes, but they usually showed more deference to an alpha king. "Forgive me, Your Majesty," she said, lowering her gaze in calculated submission. "In healing emergencies, I sometimes forget protocol. The patient becomes all that matters." He released her wrist slowly. "What's your name, healer?" "Lyra Ashwood." Something flickered across his face. Recognition? Impossible. The Ashwood name had died with her family. She'd been careful to present it as a common surname, nothing connected to the legendary Omega bloodline. "Ashwood," he repeated, tasting the name. "You've been with the pack 3 years?" "Yes, Your Majesty. 5 years total, 2 as an apprentice, 3 as a full healer. Yet I've never seen you at pack gatherings." Her pulse quickened. "I typically take hospital duty during gatherings. Someone must tend the infirmary while others celebrate." "How convenient." His tone was unreadable. "Remove my armor." It wasn't a request. Lyra's fingers trembled slightly as she worked the buckles and straps. The leather fell away, revealing a deep gash along his ribs. The wound was already showing the telltale black veins. "This needs immediate treatment," she said. "Then treat it." She worked in tense silence, cutting away poisoned flesh, applying the antidote. This close, his scent was overwhelming. Pine forests and winter storms and something wild that made her Omega instinct scream to submit, to bare her throat to number. She was a beta. Betas didn't react this way. "Your hands are shaking," he observed. "The antidote is dangerous to handle directly." She lied. "Prolonged contact can cause tremors." "Is that so?" His hand shot out, capturing hers again. This time he turned it palm up, studying the faint scars that covered her fingers. "These aren't healer's marks. They're defensive wounds." Lyra's heart hammered. Those scars were from that night, from fighting off the Renclaw Alpha with broken glass. "A patient in fever delirium," she said quickly. "Sometimes they lash out." "With claws precise enough to leave uniform marks? Interesting patient." His thumb traced one particularly deep scar, and she barely suppressed a shiver. "Tell me, Healer Ashwood, why does a beta require such strong scent suppressants?" The world tilted. He knew. Somehow, impossibly, he knew. "I don't understand what you mean," she managed. "The thornroot paste. I can smell it on you. Barely, but it's there. Either you're hiding an embarrassing natural odor," his amber gaze bored into hers, "or you're hiding something else entirely." Before she could respond, the door burst open. Marcus rushed in with supplies, Commander Wraith of the King's Guard at his heels. "Your Majesty!" Marcus exclaimed, taking in the scene with wide eyes. "Garrett, is he?" "Your healer saved him," the king said, still watching Lyra. "She has remarkable skills for someone so young." "She's one of our best," Marcus said nervously. "Never lost a patient to poison." "Then she's exactly what I need." The king pulled on his ruined shirt, movements sharp. "I want her assigned to the fortress for the gathering, personal healer to my guard." "But sir, she's needed here." "That wasn't a request, Marcus." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Report to the fortress at dawn, Healer Ashwood. Commander Wraith will show you to your quarters." His gaze found hers one last time. "And Ashwood? Bring enough of whatever you're hiding behind that thorn root. The gathering lasts 3 days. It would be unfortunate if your supply ran out." The threat in his words was unmistakable. After the king departed, Marcus rounded on her immediately. "What did you do?" he demanded. "The king doesn't notice healers. He certainly doesn't reassign them personally." "I saved his guard's life." "No, before that. He was watching you like—" Marcus's eyes narrowed. "And what did he mean about thorn root?" "I use it for joint pain. The mountain cold aggravates old injuries." Marcus clearly didn't believe her, but Garrett groaned on the table, drawing his attention. While he tended to the guard, Lyra slipped out, her mind churning. 3 days in the fortress. 3 days surrounded by dominant wolves who would kill her if they discovered the truth. And worse, 3 days under the direct observation of a king who already suspected. She needed help. That evening, Lyra made her way to the lower district where the pack's outcasts gathered. The tavern she entered was thick with smoke and unwashed bodies. In the corner booth, exactly where she knew he'd be, sat Finn. To everyone else, he was a drunk beta who'd lost his rank after a failed challenge. To Lyra, he was the only other person in Crimson Ridge living a lie. She'd discovered his secret 2 years ago. He wasn't a disgraced beta, but an alpha who'd voluntarily suppressed his nature after accidentally killing his mate in a rage. "You look troubled, healer," he said without looking up from his ale. She sat across from him. "I need your help." The great Lyra Ashwood needs help from a worthless drunk? Must be serious. "The king knows something. He's assigned me to the fortress for the gathering." Finn's head snapped up. "You can't go there. Not during—" He lowered his voice. "The visiting alphas include the Renclaw delegation." Ice flooded her veins. "That's impossible. They were banned from allied territories." "Ban lifted 6 months ago. Politics." He leaned forward. "Lyra, their new alpha is Matthias Renclaw, brother of the alpha you killed." The room spun. Matthias would recognize her. Not immediately. She'd been young, covered in blood and soot. But if he caught her scent, even suppressed. "There's more," Finn continued. "Word is he's been searching for something. Someone. A girl who disappeared over a decade ago after his brother's death. I need to run." "You can't. The king's direct order?" "Refusing would raise more suspicion. You'd be hunted before you reached the border." She knew he was right. "Then what do I do?" "Survive 3 days. Stay invisible. Double your suppressants." He pulled out a vial of clear liquid. "And take this. Last resort only. It'll completely destroy your scent for 6 hours. But the rebound when it wears off." He shook his head. "Let's just say every alpha in a mile radius will know exactly what you are." Lyra pocketed the vial. "Why help me?" "Because we outcasts need to stick together, and because if you're exposed, they'll investigate everyone you've helped." including me. That night, Lyra prepared meticulously, extra suppressants sewn into her healer's robes, scent-masking herbs in every pocket, the emergency vial hidden in her boot. She even cut her hair shorter, changing her silhouette. She also prepared something else, a vial of moonbane extract, odorless and tasteless, that would temporarily suppress an alpha's abilities if ingested, just in case. But as dawn approached, dread settled in her bones. She was walking into a trap, and the predator was already watching. The fortress gates loomed before her, carved from black stone that seemed to absorb light. Guards checked her credentials, their eyes lingering on her beta classification with something like confusion. Why would the king specifically request a beta healer? Commander Wraith met her in the courtyard, a scarred alpha with calculating eyes who looked her up and down dismissively. "You're the miracle healer? You don't look like much." She kept her head down, playing the submissive beta. "I go where I'm ordered, Commander." "Your quarters are in the servants' wing. You'll be on call constantly. The gathering begins tonight." He pointed to a towering spire. "Medical supplies are stored on the 3rd level. Familiarize yourself before the alphas arrive. You'll also have access to the feast preparations. The king wants you checking all food and drink for poisons." As she climbed the spire's winding stairs, voices drifted from above. She slowed, recognizing the king's deep timbre. "Suspicious assignment, my lord," someone was saying. "A beta healer with no military experience?" "Sometimes the best hunters hide in plain sight, Darius," the king replied. "And sometimes prey believes itself the predator." "You think she's a spy?" "I think she's something far more interesting. Watch her during tonight's feast. See how she reacts when the Renclaw delegation arrives." Lyra's blood turned to ice. He was using her as bait. But for what? Did he suspect her true identity, or did he think she was something else entirely? She forced herself to continue climbing, reaching the supply room without encountering them. The space was well stocked, organized with military precision. As she cataloged supplies, her mind raced through possibilities. The king suspected something, but not everything. Matthias would be here tonight. Her suppressants were strong but not foolproof under this much stress. A sound made her freeze. Footsteps approaching. Not the measured pace of guards, but something more purposeful. The door opened, and Darius, the king's second, entered. "Healer Ashwood." His tone was neutral, but his eyes were sharp. "The king requests your presence in his study." She had no choice but to follow. The study was a circular room high in the main tower, windows overlooking the entire territory. The king stood with his back to them, apparently absorbed in a map. "Leave us, Darius." Once alone, he turned to face her. In daylight, his presence was even more overwhelming. Tall, broad-shouldered, with an alpha's natural grace and barely leashed power. "Tell me about your family," he said, without preamble. "I have no family, Your Majesty. They died in the territory wars." "Which territory? Which war? There have been so many." He moved closer, and she fought not to step back. "You see, I've been researching the name Ashwood. Curious how many dead ends I found, almost as if someone very clever had erased their tracks." "It's a common name. In the Eastern Territories, yes. But you're not from the East, are you? Your accent, faint as it is, carries northern inflections. Specifically, Old Silvercrest dialect." Her heart hammered. He'd noticed details she thought she'd eliminated years ago. "I traveled extensively before settling here," she managed. "With no family? A young beta woman, alone, through war-torn territories?" He circled her slowly like a wolf stalking prey. "You're either incredibly lucky or incredibly capable. Which is it, Healer Ashwood? Before she could answer, a horn sounded from the courtyard. The first delegation had arrived. The king's attention shifted, giving her a momentary reprieve. "We'll continue this later," he said. "Tonight, you'll attend the feast. Stay visible. I want to see how our guests react to you." "I'm just a healer." "Nothing about you is just anything." His amber eyes held hers. "Tonight, you're under my protection. Remember that." The great hall blazed with 1,000 torches, their light reflecting off polished obsidian floors like stars on dark water. Lyra stood against the wall with the other servants, watching hundreds of wolves fill the space. Alphas from 7 different packs, their combined pheromones creating an almost visible fog of dominance and aggression. She'd triple-dosed her suppressants, but sweat still beaded on her forehead. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to submit. Instead, she gripped her healer's bag and forced herself to remain still. The king sat on his throne of twisted iron and bone, dressed in ceremonial black that made his eyes appear almost luminous. He hadn't looked at her once since she'd entered, but she felt his awareness like a weight. "The Wrenclaw delegation," the herald announced. Lyra's fingers dug into her palms as Matthias Wrenclaw entered. He looked nothing like his brother. Where the dead alpha had been brutish and crude, Matthias was refined, dangerous in the way of a poisoned blade. His dark hair was pulled back, revealing sharp cheekbones and eyes the color of old blood. Those eyes swept the room and paused on her. Number impossible. She looked completely different. Her scent was hidden. There was no way. He started walking toward her. Panic flooded her system. She couldn't run. That would confirm suspicions. But if he got close enough to really study her? "Healer Ashwood," the king's voice cut through the hall. "Attend me." Relief nearly buckled her knees. She crossed to the throne, keeping her head down, feeling Matthias track her movement. "Your Majesty?" She pitched her voice slightly lower than usual, adding a rasp that disguised its natural tone. "Pour my wine." He held out his goblet, and when she leaned close to fill it, he spoke so quietly only she could hear. "Interesting how Wrenclaw noticed you immediately." "I've never seen him before tonight." "No? Then why is your pulse racing?" His fingers brushed her wrist as she poured, and she knew he could feel her hammering heartbeat. "Why do you smell of fear beneath all those masking herbs?" Before she could answer, Matthias approached the throne. "King Blackmoon, I thank you for lifting our ban." "Political necessities, Wrenclaw, though I trust you'll behave better than your late brother." Something dangerous flashed in Matthias's eyes. "My brother died in territory that now belongs to you." "Territory gained through lawful challenge, after your brother's death left a power vacuum." The king's tone was mild, but Lyra heard the warning beneath. "Ancient history." "Indeed." Matthias's gaze shifted to her. "Your healer looks familiar. Have we met?" "I doubt it," the king answered for her. "Ashwood has been pack-bound since arriving here. Never travels." "Ashwood." Matthias repeated the name slowly, and Lyra saw the moment recognition began to dawn. Not full awareness, but something. "An interesting name. I once knew an Ashwood family. They had a daughter." Lyra's throat constricted. She forced herself to speak. "Common name in the Eastern Territories, Lord Wrenclaw." "Is it?" He stepped closer, and she caught his scent, metal and smoke and old rage. "You have unusual eyes for a beta, silver gray, like moonlight on water." Her mother's eyes, her grandmother's eyes, the eyes that marked every female in the Ashwood Omega line. "Many people have gray eyes," the king interjected, his tone now edged with warning. "You're making my healer nervous, Wrenclaw." My apologies, it's just, my brother died pursuing someone with eyes like those. I've always wondered what became of her. Children's tales, the king said dismissively. Your brother died in a territorial dispute. The council confirmed it. The council confirmed what they were told. Matthias bowed stiffly. Enjoy the feast, Your Majesty. As he walked away, Lyra realized she'd stopped breathing. The king noticed too. Follow me, he commanded, rising from his throne. Bring your supplies. He led her through a hidden door behind the throne into a private study. The moment the door closed, he rounded on her. Stop lying to me. I don't know what you... He moved faster than her eyes could track, pinning her against the wall, his hands planted on either side of her head. You're not just hiding your designation, you're hiding from him specifically. Why? This close, his alpha presence was overwhelming. Her omega nature thrashed against her suppressants like a wild thing in a cage. I can't, she whispered. Can't or won't? Both. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her neck. I could command you. Alpha authority would break through whatever walls you've built. Then you'd be no better than the alphas I'm hiding from. He pulled back slightly, studying her face. You're terrified, but not of me. Even now, with my hands on either side of you, your fear is for something else. Someone else. A knock interrupted them. Your Majesty, Darius called through the door. There's been an incident. Lord Renclaw claims someone attempted to poison him. The king didn't move. Poisoned? Yes, sir. He's demanding access to our investigation records from the old territories. Says he has proof the Ashwood Omega survived. Lyra's legs nearly gave out. The king caught her, his hand steadying her waist. Tell him I'll speak with him tomorrow, he called back, after he's recovered. Footsteps retreated. The king's hands didn't leave her waist. The Ashwood Omega, he said slowly. The last pure bloodline, worth kingdoms, supposedly died with her family. His fingers tightened. But she didn't. Did she? Lyra's silence was answer enough. She thought of the moonbane she'd slipped into Matthias's wine during her inspection of the feast preparations. Not enough to harm him permanently, just enough to cause illness and buy her time. You poisoned him, the king said, reading her expression. During your inspection of the feast preparations. She didn't deny it. Clever, he murmured. Desperate but clever. He released her, stepping back. How long have you been hiding? Since I was 14. The words came out barely above a whisper. And the Renclaw Alpha who died? Your family? He murdered them. All of them. Made my mother watch before. She stopped, unable to continue. And when he came for you? I defended myself. She met his gaze defiantly. The law says that's still murder. An Omega killing an Alpha, regardless of reason. The law is wrong. The simple statement broke something in her. Tears she'd held back for years threatened to fall. You've been hiding in my pack for 3 years, he continued. Under my nose. Why didn't you run when you learned Renclaw would be here? Your direct order. Refusing would have drawn more attention. So you decided to poison him instead? Moonbane, temporary suppression of his alpha abilities. It'll wear off in a few days, but for now, he can't scent designations, can't shift, can't use his strength. The king stared at her. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. A dark, appreciative sound. You're magnificent. Magnificent? Lyra couldn't hide her shock. I just confessed to poisoning a visiting alpha. You defended yourself against a threat. There's a difference. The king moved to his desk, pulling out a thick folder. Do you know what this is? She shook her head. 3 years of observations, every gathering you avoided, every full moon you missed, every omega you've helped hide. He set the folder down. I've known something was different about you from the beginning. My wolf knew. That's impossible. The suppressants don't work on mate bonds. The words hung in the air between them. Lyra felt the world tilt. No, she breathed. That's not. We've never even spoken before yesterday. A true mate bond doesn't require words. It doesn't require proximity. It only requires two souls recognizing each other. He moved closer, and her traitorous body swayed toward him. My wolf recognized yours the moment you entered my territory. It's been driving me half mad, sensing you but never finding you. You're wrong. But even as she said it, memories flooded back. The dreams she'd had for 3 years, running through forests, a massive black wolf at her side, the pull she'd felt toward the fortress, the way her omega nature had always settled when she caught his scent on the wind, despite never having met him. Am I? He was close enough now that she could see the gold flecks in his amber irises. Tell me you haven't felt it. Tell me you haven't dreamed of running with a black wolf. Tell me your omega doesn't sing when you hear my voice. She couldn't. Because it was all true. It doesn't matter, she whispered. If Matthias discovers what I am, I'll kill him. The casual certainty in his voice made her shiver. You can't just execute a visiting alpha. I can if he threatens my mate. He caught her chin gently, forcing her to meet his gaze. You are mine, Lyra Ashwood. You've been mine since you set foot in my territory. The only question is whether you'll accept it. My heat, she said desperately. It's coming. The suppressants have been holding it back, but with all this stress, all these alphas, I know. His thumb traced her jaw. I can smell it beneath everything else. 24 hours, perhaps less. You don't understand. The Ashwood heat isn't normal. The pheromones, they can drive an entire pack into frenzy. My mother told me stories. Wars have been started over an Ashwood omega in heat. Then it's fortunate I'm not just any alpha. His eyes flashed silver again, that ancient primal color she'd seen when he first burst into the storage room. I'm the Alpha King. My wolf is older, stronger, more controlled than any other. You can't know that. I can. He pulled back slightly. But I won't force this. You have a choice, Lyra. Try to weather your heat alone, hiding in the servants' quarters, hoping your suppressants hold long enough, or let me claim you properly, publicly, before it begins. Publicly? A mating ceremony. Tonight. Before all the gathered packs. His expression was serious. Once claimed, no other alpha can touch you. Not even Matthias, regardless of what his brother might have wanted. You'd bind yourself to me just to protect me from him? Something shifted in his expression. Frustration, perhaps even hurt. You think this is just about protection? He grabbed her shoulders gently. Lyra, I've been dreaming of you for 3 years, searching for you. My wolf has been slowly going feral without its mate, and now that I've found you, you think I'd let you go? A commotion erupted outside, shouting, snarling, the sound of bodies hitting stone. Darius burst through the door. Your Majesty, Matthias has recovered faster than expected. He's demanding the healer be brought before the pack. He says... Darius glanced at Lyra. He says he has proof she's the lost Ashwood Omega. The king's expression darkened. Proof? A scrap of cloth, preserved from that night. His brother had it on him when he died. It carries a scent, faint, but apparently distinctive to the Ashwood line. Lyra recognized what he meant immediately, a piece of her mother's shawl. She'd wrapped it around herself in the cave, and the alpha must have torn a piece during the struggle. He's demanding she be tested against it publicly, Darius continued. If she refuses, he'll consider it admission of guilt. Guilt of what? The king's voice was dangerously quiet. Being born an Omega? Defending herself? Existing? Of murdering his brother, sir. The king turned to Lyra. We're out of time. Decide now. Face him as you are, hiding behind failing suppressants, or face him as my mate, under my protection. Lyra looked between them, the king offering her everything she'd dreamed of but never thought she could have, and Darius, representing the world that would judge her for crimes of survival. Her heat was coming. Her suppressants were failing. Matthias had evidence. But more than that, she was tired. Tired of hiding. Tired of lying. Tired of being alone. Call for the ceremony, she said quietly. But know this. I'm not doing this just for protection. I've felt the bond too. I've dreamed the same dreams. I've loved you from the shadows for 3 years. She met his gaze fully. I choose you, Theron Blackmoon. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Relief and joy transformed his features. He pulled her against him, burying his face in her hair. Finally, he murmured. Finally. Your Majesty, Darius prompted. Matthias is gathering support. If we're doing this, it needs to be now. Theron pulled back, his hand finding Lyra's. Gather the pack. Prepare the ceremonial grounds. And Darius. His eyes flashed silver. Make sure Matthias Renclaw has a front row seat. As they left the study, Lyra felt her carefully constructed world crumbling. But perhaps, she thought as Theron's hand tightened around hers, something better was rising from the ruins. The gathered packs filled the ceremonial grounds, a natural amphitheater carved into the mountain. Torches burned in a great circle, and at the center stood an ancient stone altar where matings had been sealed for generations. Matthias stood at the front of the crowd, his face twisted with rage. The moonbane was still affecting him. She could see it in the way he moved, slightly off balance, his alpha presence dimmed. This is absurd, he shouted as they approached. That female is a criminal. She murdered Lord Rendclaw. Theron's voice carried absolute authority. You stand on my territory, in my ceremonial grounds, interrupting a sacred rite. Choose your next words very carefully. Matthias pulled out the scrap of fabric, holding it high. This carries the scent of the Ashwood Omega line. Test her against it. Let the truth be known. The truth? Lyra stepped forward, and for the first time in 12 years she didn't lower her gaze from an alpha's stare. The truth is that your brother came in the night like a coward. He slaughtered my sleeping father, my young brothers. He made my mother watch as he killed everything she loved, then murdered her too. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even Theron's pack, who'd known her as a beta healer, stared in shock. Lies, Matthias snarled. The truth, Lyra continued, her voice carrying clearly, is that when he cornered me, a 14-year-old girl in a cave, he told me I should be grateful, that he was giving me purpose, that an Ashwood Omega belonged to whoever was strong enough to take her. She pulled off her healer's robe, revealing the scars that covered her arms. The truth is that I fought, and when he tried to force his claim on me, yes, I killed him. With a piece of broken glass from my mother's mirror, the same mirror she'd looked in that morning, never knowing it would be her last. The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. For 12 years I've hidden, not because I was guilty, but because I knew the law wouldn't protect an Omega who defended herself against an Alpha. She looked directly at Matthias. Your brother was a monster, and if you'd found me before tonight, you would have been too. You admit it then. Matthias lunged forward, but his weakened state made him stumble. You murdered an alpha. The law demands— The law is about to change, Theron interrupted, moving to stand beside Lyra. As Alpha King, I hereby decree that any Omega has the right to defend themselves against forced claiming, regardless of the attacker's designation. Uproar erupted. Some Alphas protested loudly, while others, particularly the females and Omegas in the crowd, cheered. You can't, Matthias started. I can, and I have. Theron's eyes were pure silver now. Furthermore, I call for a formal investigation into the Rendclaw Pack's actions 12 years ago. The murder of the Ashwood family. The attempted forced claiming of a minor. These crimes will be answered. She has no proof. I am her proof, an unexpected voice called out. The crowd parted as Finn stepped forward. But not the drunk beta Finn. This was Finn, with his shoulders straight, his alpha presence restored. I am Finn Morrison, former enforcer of the Rendclaw Pack. His voice carried across the amphitheater. I was there that night, ordered to stand guard while my alpha went after the Ashwood family. I heard the screams. I saw the bodies. I did nothing to stop it, to my eternal shame. Matthias went white. Finn, you're dead. You died in the territorial wars. I faked my death and suppressed my alpha nature as penance. I've been hiding here, just as she has. But no more. He turned to address the crowd. I testify that everything the Ashwood Omega says is true. The family was murdered in cold blood for refusing to give up their daughter. The crowd's energy shifted, anger now directed at Matthias rather than Lyra. This changes nothing. Matthias desperately pulled out a vial, something that gleamed with unnatural light. If I can't have her, no one. He threw it at the ground. The vial shattered, releasing a cloud of concentrated pheromones, not just Ashwood pheromones, but something twisted, amplified, wrong. Every alpha in the amphitheater staggered. Eyes flashed red. Growls rumbled from hundreds of throats. Even Theron tensed, his control wavering. The frenzy was beginning. What have you done? Someone screamed. Given them what they want. Matthias laughed, though the Moonbane kept him unaffected. An Ashwood Omega in heat. Or close enough. Let's see your precious control now, Alpha King. Lyra felt it immediately, her own heat responding to the artificial pheromones, triggering what she'd been holding back. Fire raced through her veins. Her scent, suppressed for so long, exploded outward. Real Ashwood pheromones mixed with the artificial ones, creating a maelstrom of desire and aggression. Alphas began shifting, losing themselves to their wolves. Violence was seconds away. Lyra! Theron gritted out, his control hanging by a thread. Run! No. She grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. I'm done running. She kissed him. The world exploded. The mate bond, held back by suppressants and denial, slammed into place with devastating force. Power rippled outward from them, not the chaotic energy of unclaimed heat, but the controlled, directed force of a true bond. Every wolf in the amphitheater dropped to their knees, submitting instinctively to the display of absolute dominance. When they broke apart, Theron's eyes were silver gold, ancient and powerful. Without hesitation, he bit down on her neck, claiming her formally before all gathered. Lyra gasped at the sensation, pain and pleasure and rightness all at once. Then, driven by instinct older than civilization, she returned the bite, marking him as hers. The artificial pheromones dissipated. overwhelmed by the reality of a true Ashwood mating. The crowd remained kneeling, awed by what they'd witnessed. "It's done," Theron announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the territory. "She is my mate, my queen, your Luna. Any who challenge this will answer to me." Matthias, still standing due to the moonbane, looked around at his kneeling supporters, his failed plan, his utter defeat. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." Lyra stepped forward, power radiating from her that had nothing to do with pheromones and everything to do with finding her place at last. "You came here seeking the Ashwood Omega to use as a weapon, but you never understood. We're not weapons. We're not prizes. We're the balance. The bridge between strength and wisdom, power and compassion." She gestured to the kneeling crowd. "They don't kneel because they're forced to. They kneel because they recognize what you never could. That true strength comes from choice, from partnership, from love." Guards moved in to arrest Matthias, his own wolves abandoning him. As he was dragged away, Lyra turned to address the crowd properly. "For 12 years I hid from what I was. No more. I am Lyra Ashwood, last of my line. I am Omega, healer, survivor. And I am mate to your Alpha King." Her voice rang with authority. "Rise, all of you. The age of hiding is over." 6 months later, the full moon hung heavy over Crimson Ridge as Lyra stood on the balcony of the royal chambers, her hands resting on her rounded belly. The twins, the healer had confirmed it just that morning, kicked strongly, already showing their Alpha-Omega heritage. "The first Ashwood pups in a generation," Theron murmured, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "The council is beside themselves with protocols. Let them fuss. These children will know no hiding, no fear." She leaned back against him. "They'll grow up in a world where Omegas aren't prizes to be won, but equals to be cherished." The changes had been swift after that night. Matthias Renclaw had been executed for his crimes, not by Theron, but by his own pack, disgusted by the truth Finn had revealed. The Renclaw territory had been absorbed into Crimson Ridge, with Finn serving as regional governor, finding redemption in justice. The laws had changed too. Omegas could now defend themselves without legal repercussion. Forced claiming had become punishable by death, and suppressants, while still available for those who chose them, were no longer necessary for survival. "My mother would have been proud," Lyra said softly, watching the pack run below. Wolves of every designation moved together, alphas, betas, omegas, all equal under the moon. "She would have been proud of you," Theron corrected, his hand gentle on her belly. "You didn't just survive, my love. You transformed an entire world." "We transformed it," she corrected. "I couldn't have done it without an alpha willing to see beyond tradition." A knock interrupted them. Darius entered, bowing slightly. "Your Majesties, the delegation from the Northern Territories has arrived. They're requesting an audience about the new laws." "Tell them we'll see them tomorrow," Theron said. "Tonight is the full moon. Tonight, we run." After Darius left, Lyra turned in Theron's arms. "I haven't shifted since that night in the cave. What if I've forgotten how?" "You haven't." He kissed her gently. "Your wolf has been waiting, just as mine has. They know each other, remember? They've been dreaming of running together for 3 years." They made their way to the ceremonial grounds where the pack had gathered. As one, hundreds of wolves tilted their heads back and howled, not in challenge or threat, but in welcome. Lyra felt the shift take her for the first time in 12 years. It should have been painful after so long, but it felt like coming home. Her wolf form was smaller than the alphas around her, but radiated power that had nothing to do with size. Theron shifted beside her, the massive black wolf from her dreams. He touched his nose to hers, and she heard his voice in her mind through their bond. Run with me, my mate. No more hiding. No more fear. Just us and the moon and freedom. Together, they ran. Through forests and valleys, over mountains and streams, the Alpha King and his Omega Queen, proof that sometimes the greatest power comes not from taking, but from choosing. Behind them, the pack followed, howling their joy to the stars. The age of hiding was over. The age of choice had begun.